If you have been quietly carrying the question of whether you might be more than you always thought, I have made something for you. The 3-day Clarity Experience is 3 evenings together, July 21st, 22nd, 23rd at 7 p.m. Central, live on Zoom. Not a webinar, a room of women who simply understand because they came to this the way you did. Camera on or off, you are welcome exactly as you are. This is Anne-Marie, and your people are waiting. Hi, and welcome to Coming Out and Beyond. I am Anne-Marie Zanzal, Yale Divinity School graduate, ordained progressive minister, grief counselor, and LGBTQ plus coach who came out in midlife. And if you are a woman questioning your sexuality, this podcast is made for you. Maybe you're sitting with a question you never said out loud. You fell for a woman or something woke up recently and everything shifted and you just can't put it back. Maybe you are untangling years of religious conditioning or compulsory heterosexuality and trying to figure out who you are underneath all that. This isn't about rushing labels or blowing up your life. It's about integration, self-trust, and the kind of community that changes everything. Whatever brought you here, this space is for you. Each week, we have honest conversations about what it actually looks like to come out after 30, 40, 50, 60, and beyond. This journey is yours, and you are coming home to yourself. And let me be the first to welcome you home. Let's begin. Hello, everybody. This is Anne-Marie, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Out and Beyond. Today is part 2 of my conversation with trans activist Dahron Johnson.
After that moment, once I realized that a turn, a change had to be made within a day, within 48 hours, I was making phone calls, I was contacting care providers, I was trying to figure out how to take next steps. And this was, of course, all before I even had come out to my wife. That would still take a couple months yet. But I knew that I had to at least begin those conversations. And so immediately started to try to put those pieces in place. As I was saying previously, it's not like my therapist herself was really experienced much with these things. She was just trying to be supportive as best she could. So it really was kind of an investigation process for myself to figure out. But we were able to get those things together. We were able to start putting those dates on the calendar for when the next appointment would be. And I'll say too, even it was such a confluence of events at the same time. This was in early January when I had this appointment with my therapist. Just a couple of weeks later, a friend of mine contacted me saying that they had tickets for the Glennon Doyle book reading at TPAC, which was going to be at the beginning of March.
It was book reading. We didn't even know each other then, but I was at reading.
I'll have to send you the photos because in that conversation, in that moment, I decided, okay, that's going to be my public coming out moment. And so I was trying to figure out places where I could get clothes because I never really dressed or tried to look like this self prior to coming out. Once a year, maybe, but it would be so depressing. Like, what am I even aiming towards that I wouldn't follow through with it at all? So I was trying to assemble a wardrobe for the evening, put that together. I was trying to get these appointments on the calendar. I was trying to keep attention to when those dates were on the calendar because I was playing the wait list shell game with my appointments because it was so far out. It was 6 or 7 months until I was going to be able to see a doc. I knew that I didn't want to wait that long. So I made the appointment, put myself on the wait list. And as soon as I would get any earlier date, I would say yes, move it up by even just a few days, and then put myself on the wait list again and kept on moving that up.
I'm curious, how long did it take you to get in to see the doctor?
It's from 6 months to 6 weeks.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Really was able to shorten that time down. In the meantime, I was continuing to have conversations with the folks at the program for LGBTQ health. I also knew I'm a big cyclist. One of the first ways I showed up in advocacy spaces was really testifying about trans participation in sport and finding a bridge from old guy drag me who participated in cycling to this me. It was really important that I find those connection points. And there's actually a bike shop here in town that had a sort of a queer trans femme ride. And I showed up. I had hair that was about big and
So
a
Aaron
face that
is
was kind of
showing like a quarter inch.
that's right. Face that was still scruffy as all get out. I was nervously texting the ride organizer saying, I don't know if other folks are going to feel comfortable with me being there, and I want to make sure that it's okay,
Why were you
but
trying
I
to
feel
take
like I
care
should
of
be
other
there.
people?
I know. I
Well,
know.
that's the
I know.
ultimate caretaker.
Yeah.
And you went.
And I
How
went.
did it?
And that was my first time kind of claiming myself outwardly as somewhere on the gender expansive spectrum. Then a couple of weeks after that, we had a tornado here in town.
And
A week after
COVID.
that's right. Well, and in between COVID lockdown and the tornado, we had the momentous event of that Glennon
Well,
Doyle
and then they
book reading.
tour right after it because of COVID.
They That's right. I had this elaborate ruse of why I couldn't pick my wife up from work. And so then I drove halfway to the theater downtown, pulled out my brand new outfit I'd never even tried on before,
Mhm.
changed in the back of my car, put on high heels for the first time, parked across Legislative Plaza, got out of the car, walked across Legislative Plaza and into T-Pack, waiting for my friend was waiting for me. And that was my first moment out in the world. And then to your point, the world shut down 6
Did.
days later, right?
It shut down. So how did it feel like? What did that feel like for you? I mean, it's very nerve-wracking when you first
Yeah.
it's like it's almost the moment gets missed because we're so nervous about everything, you know? But what was it like?
On multiple levels, it was so fortune telling in a way,
Mhm.
right? I mean, the fact that I'm stressing this moment that I'm parking on a side street in downtown Nashville and then using Legislative Plaza as a cut through. Well, little did I know how many times, for how many reasons, I would be walking across Legislative Plaza just a year from then, basically, and then walking into this space where there was 1,000 plus other people, right, for this book reading.
Mhm.
And little did I know how much being public facing as this person that I was so, to your point, right, so nervous and anxious about. And yet each of those little elements of that journey almost indicate something that was going to happen in the days to come.
Well, I always believe that when we are moving toward our authenticity or our integrity, that the universe moves very fast. Like things just fall into place really quickly. And I truly believe that. And it makes a lot of sense to me because that was your ultimate life's journey to go in that direction and be an example for other people and be an advocate for other people. That was where you were supposed to be all this time, right? And now you're here. And now you've been doing
That's right.
it. You're an old pro at like being a lobbyist now. You've been doing this for 6 years.
It really is unreal. And I would say, we could almost have a whole podcast, I feel like, on just that one phrase that you put out there. I'm got the great opportunity this evening to facilitate a conversation among some queer business owners and folks who work with organizations. And I emailed them earlier today saying one of the things I want to focus on is how we come to acknowledge our internal voice that is trying to tell us to do something and how we come to trust that voice to actually then take action in the world. And to your point about how things in the universe start acting quickly, I think once we start trusting that internal voice that's been trying to tell us something about ourselves for so long, and then we realize, oh yeah, that inner voice really was right.
Mhm.
We start paying attention to it a little bit more, which then helps us align better with the world around us, and the world around us aligns better with us who are more in alignment with ourselves, right? So it's all these little shifts that then add up to pieces, like you were saying, falling into place in ways that we never would have imagined before. But that's because we hadn't, you know, what is that old song about? I've been all around the world, but I've never been to me,
Mhm.
right?
Oh, yeah, that's like I remember that song.
I've listened to 10,000 other voices in culture, but I've never listened to my own. That's a huge part of this whole thing. And to sort of jump cut to the present moment, I'll just say that's one of the things that I continue to reinforce now. Like I said, with that panel discussion, is one of the things I'll be focusing on as well, to get people to think about how they do or don't trust their own voices, the ways that the world around us really practices us into not trusting our internal voice, our gut instinct.
And if you have been acculturated as a female from the time you were
Thank
born,
you. Thank you for finishing that sentence for me. Absolutely correct.
you like I'm gonna say, Darren, most of my work with women coming out later in life, people who were acculturated as girls and conditioned as girls, my work is getting them to trust their own voice. There is a particular kind of loneliness in asking midlife whether you may not be straight, and feeling like every space out there was built for someone younger, louder, or further along. I understand because I've lived this experience too. So I want to invite you to the 3-day Clarity Experience. 3 evenings together, July 21st, 22nd, and 23rd at 7 p.m. Central, live on Zoom. It is a room of women who came to this the way you did, who need no explanation from you. You can keep your camera off, stay quiet, and simply be present. Wherever you are on the path, there is room for you. There is also a VIP option if you would like a private call with me afterward. This is Anne-Marie, and your people are waiting. Their own knowing. That's what my work is. That's all I do. All day long. I listen to their stories. I listen for pieces of the story, and I point out when they've trusted their own voice and how it went for them. And then I also listen for their voices when they're not listening. Because like as women, we're told, like, for example, one of the things that we're told as women is that relationships with men are difficult. So when relationships with men are difficult, we've been told that our entire lives. So when things aren't going right, we're like, oh, well, I guess I just have to do this. And then when you put sexuality into all of that mix, it's really hard to listen to your own voice. And so like when I finally listen to my own voice, I completely understand, like the world, the universe fell into, like, look what all the stuff I do now. Like,
That's right. That's right.
I was in the other thing Darren and I have in common is we've worked in hospice for a long time. We both have been chaplains in hospice. So that's what I did for a long time. And now I do so many different things to like preach this message. And to me, what I do now is a ministry. It's a small M ministry, and it's not based in a faith, but it's based in the belief. It is based in the belief that we are always supposed to move towards our truth, and the universe is waiting for us to do that. And when people talk to me about hell and stuff like that, I'm like, I'm so far beyond that. I don't think about those things, and
this is one of the reasons I'm not going to,
that I stopped thinking about hell.
I'm not going to turn into like academic religion wonk in this conversation, but I'll say this is one of the reasons like the transcendentalist period in American religious history is so fascinating to me, because of whether it's the Emersonian or the Walt Whitman notion of this sort of I am that includes the soldier in the field and the baker and the spouse and birthing mother and the grieving father, that all that's contained within this one. And because all of that's contained within the one, and the one is in us, that we cannot be contained within our hat and boots, right? And then you have the William James sense of the more.
Hmm.
I believe all of those things are deep, true in the fullest sense of truth, messages about our lives of faith, about the lives of who we are, about our paths of becoming and discovering the more of who we are. And so when you say ministry, yes, I get what you mean by small m ministry, but I will say capital M in sense of importance, in the sense of one of the best ministries that any of us and have for each other is to encourage us to question what we're hearing from the outside,
Hmm.
to try to see how that reconciles or doesn't with what we're hearing for our embodied selves on the inside. The we're we're so much time and so many societal pressures are tuned to keep us from attending fully to ourselves and rather instead to, oh, women have got to be weak and have a certain role, and mothers and heterosexual and look a certain way and whatever it is. And should we allow ourselves to simply attend to who we are and what our selves are telling us about who we are? Wow, how much richer, how much more amazing each one of us could be, and in turn our neighborhoods, our communities, our world around us.
Yeah, that is like if people could embrace who they authentically are, and I mean everybody. I'm not just talking about gay people or queer people or LGBTQ people, because if we could all just embrace who we are and who we were created to be and who what our belief systems and values are, I think the world would be a much happier place. Instead of
Yeah,
trying to fit into a box that maybe you are not supposed to be a part of and not supposed to be inside of. And so I do feel like people in the queer community a lot of times can lead the way with this because it's tough. It's
that's
tough.
right. That's
And
right.
and for the trans community, it's 10,000 times tougher than it needs to be right now, unfortunately, with what's going on.
I was thinking that, that I do want to put a caution on myself. I'm throwing around and kind of really have been putting forward this kind of brand notion of the self. And if we only listen to ourselves. And I do want to caution myself about that and to say that part of the big issue for a lot of queer folks and especially for queer folks intersectional with any other non majority identity is the number of ways in which even coming to a place where we feel that we have a self worth attending to. It's not just listening to that inner voice, it's believing that getting to a place where this is a capital S self that is important, that has value in its own right. I mean, we know all the ways that queer folks are demeaned, but if you're person of color, black folk, if you're Latino in this country right now, how many or decades and centuries before, how many different ways has your very life been devalued? And we need to be attentive to, and one of the things I continue to try to work on for myself is how do I help bridge that gap? How do we create structures and pathways that allow folks to really start believing in themselves, in a self that is worth believing in, and then listening to what that self is saying? It, for a lot of folks, I think it's a two-step process where even getting to the place where you acknowledge yourself, your own life as of real value is a tough road.
You and I are privileged. We're white. We even,
Yeah,
even though we're queer,
that's
a
right.
lot of privilege. And I'm gonna say, when I don't appear with my wife, I have even probably straight privilege because people don't assume automatically
That's right.
gay. When I'm with my wife, people know I'm gay because she's masculine of center. And so it's really like a lot of times I do think about that a lot in the sense that I am a white woman. I do have a lot more privilege than other people that I can do this
Mhm.
and it may not be as difficult as it would be for someone who has other intersectionality of identities. This is a very small way that I try to make a difference in that. is all my advertising and marketing. I make sure that I have people in color in it. It is just a tiny little way, but it's just like I want them to be represented and to know that this is possible for them as well. It may be naive in a way, but it's like really important to me that I show people of all like abilities and all colors in my marketing because it's not just white ladies who are coming out later in life.
Yeah, that's
Right.
right.
There's not white people that are doing this.
That's right.
There's a lot of other people that are doing this as well, and they need to be represented. I'm really
100%.
Yeah, I'm really curious, Darren. When you finally told your wife, how did that all go? Was she surprised or did she know?
At that point, I had already had a first visit with a care provider, and they said, it's pretty obvious this is something that you have been struggling with and working through for decades. I have no doubt about your transness. I could start you on hormones right now, right? I was on the cusp of 50, so I was a little bit older ready. And even as she said that, she added a but and said, but I really think that you need to think about finding a way that you can be comfortable telling your wife. Let's schedule a visit in, X number of weeks,
So you had
come back. Yeah, I did at that point, and that proved pretty crucial. So we agreed. I went away.
but maybe helpful.
Yeah.
Because I know with the community I work with, people put it off. There's always a reason to put it off, right? Because it's a hard conversation. It's a difficult conversation. So you having a deadline probably got a little bit of a fire under your ass because you're like, I got to tell her, or the doctors are not going to let me advance in my treatment.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that, and, that legislative plaza into a crowd of 1,000 plus moment was already kind of signaling the way that my life was moving. Then, in the sense that if I didn't tell her, it would be as if I wasn't listening to that internal self saying, this is the direction in which you can head,
Hmm.
that you've been pulling back on your own reins about. But it's going to be a heck of a lot harder if your family isn't in it with you, if they don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And ev so that was happening. The world was shut down by that point. This was mid, late April, and none of us knew sort of what the next day would hold, just as not even, yes, in an existential sense, but also just in a practical sense. Like, when am I going to go back to the office? What is school for our child going to look like? What's work going to be like? All those type of things. And so there's this whole other set of pressures at that moment to say, I mean, look at how crazy the world's gotten in the last 4 weeks. You wanna put off saying something about this even longer? You don't know what the next day is gonna hold. You don't know what the next moment's gonna help hold. So if you take the really practical pressures that my doctor was putting on, you take those early COVID era pressures that the world was.
Very
Yeah,
scary.
exactly. And then with both of those, the additional hopeful hope filled, hope directed possibility of a future that seemed to be really opening itself up, even in that shutdown moment that we were all living through. I knew it had to be then. That said, we were having kind of a contentious evening, as folks who have been together for almost 25 years have from time to
I was
time.
married to 27 and now 10. I gotcha.
We were sitting in the back room of my house, and I just said, well, I did not think that I would have a place to live
Hmm.
after this conversation. I just didn't see how it would be received with any type of welcome or affirmation. But for all the reasons I was just listed, I didn't see how I could put it off any longer.
Hmm.
And so I simply said, I need to let you know that I'm trans.
Hmm. Did she know?
And
Like, did she understand what trans meant?
just enough to get us through the evening. I mean, obviously, I was still in my own education path too, so I couldn't exactly hold hold fault in partner who A didn't know about this, B didn't know, didn't have any reason to sort of intimate or immediate reason to learn more about it
Yeah.
as I was learning. But one of her first questions, if not her very first question, was, "Does that mean that you're leaving?" And I said, "No, of course not. Just want to stay. I want to continue to be with you and not to sort of give short shrift to the rest of that evening or that part of the story. But I think the important thing that I hold on to from that time is that there's still a lot of change and loss and grief work to work through for both of us,
Hmm.
that we were having to do it in the pressure cooker of that moment. And yet, still, we found a way to navigate through it. And I can never be thankful enough,
Hmm.
be grateful enough that has been willing to journey with this self that we were both getting to know at the same time.
Hmm.
And it has been just over 6 years now since that moment, and, mm, we're approaching we'll be 29 years married this year, so we're still trying to figure out a way forward.
Is such a challenge navigating all that. And I really do want to say that the grief is hard. The grief of because your marriage changed. And as soon as those words come out of your mouth, whether whatever they are, your marriage inherently changes. You can't go back. And a lot of times people try to dial it back and go back and you can't. And I give you both a lot of credit. It's a lot to navigate. And I also understand the grief and I also understand her grief as well.
But
She is grieving the Darren that was. Being introduced to the Darren that is. What does this mean for my marriage? What does this mean for me as a straight woman? What does this mean for our child? All those things. And it's a lot of work. Do you have people that hold you for that? Do you guys have like community or anything that you are held together in with that?
I mean, first and foremost, we both have therapists.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. That would be important even if it wasn't this particular story.
Hmm.
But I will say that a lovely image that my wife told me that her therapist gave to her was that regardless of the people in the marriage, you are married to multiple different people over the course of that marriage.
Absolutely. And when you get divorced, you're not divorcing the person you're married to.
That's right.
Because I
That's right.
I got divorced and he was not the person I was married to when I got divorced. And people
Yeah.
don't and that surprises people sometimes. But as we go through life, I mean, if you were the same person that you were when you were 25 when you got married, that means no growth has happened and that's not a good thing. So we do change in the life of our marriage.
That's exactly right, and I think that was really helpful. I think that I'm not saying that this helped all the way through, but I would try to recenter myself with my own sort of grief work self as we went through all this and saying, and trying to give space for all the big feelings, even if a lot of her recognized early on that this self would be a better self to be partnered with, that when you're moving to preferred place B from preferred place A, you're still leaving preferred place and person A behind, right? Even if you want to get to where the next stop on the destination is. And if we don't allow ourselves space to grieve those losses, to acknowledge those changes and the grief that comes with them, then we're not going to be able to grab onto the richness and fullness of the next stop as much as we even would want to, because there's still a big part of us, recognized or not, that's trying to work through that change and loss and grief internally, even as we're continuing to move forward. So it's better just to be intentional about it, to name it, to get it out on the table,
Mhm.
to work through it, and then move forward from there. Those moments where the grief was really big with her and needing a partner in the way that we have partners to hold us, to use your image, when the feelings are big and the situations are tough. And yet, in that moment, I was also the person that was the loss of whom was being grieved. Right. So I'm both the object and the support person in this moment.
And the
And it
griever, because you're grieving a bunch of stuff. You're grieving like everything that you've lost, even though you want it, even though you're ready to move away from the male version, you're still grieving that person. Like people don't
richness of the sense, thing that I kept on coming back to, and it still hits me hard sometimes, is hit me hard last night. I was crying about it last night. I've had some really amazing opportunities come up recently. They're big challenges. I've just been voted in as our Metro Human Relations Commission chair
understand.
here. And that is, it feels daunting. I mean, we're in a moment when we're trying to turn our notions of discrimination on their head, and just remaining steadfast in doing the work of welcome and anti-discrimination is a tough ask right now. I love that challenge so much, and yet I kept myself from availing myself of those opportunities for 3 decades, 4 decades, because I was so scared about what this self, how this self in the world would be received, how this self would be lived out by me individually. And those griefs still continue to this day, not in the same way, but just thinking of how much life got left behind or lived out in a way other than in the fullness that I'm able to live it out now. Those are still tough ones to navigate.
Well, I completely and utterly understand what you're talking about. Later in life coming out process. One of the things I said, I was grieving the life that I thought I was going to have with my spouse and grieving the life I didn't have as a young lesbian. I just
Yeah.
didn't have that. And,
Yeah.
and so I totally understand. And that is ambiguous grief. I want to add another thing. I realized the other day my wife was estranged from her father from the time she was in her 20s because she came out as a lesbian, and he just died last year, and she never reconnected with him, but he's still around in the family. She just wasn't connected to him. And she always talked about how she loved him in the sense of who he was when she was a young girl. He was a good dad. Her parents were divorced, but she spent a lot of time with him. She really loved him, and that's who she carries with her. And for me, with my estrangement with my child that I had, now I understand. I'm not estranged. We're working on repair now, but my estrangement from my child, now I understand because they're different now. They've just been diagnosed with ADHD. They're non-binary. They've got a lot going on. And I like that is like right now is the love I had for the child that I knew until they were about 21. And because I haven't really talked to them, they were not very happy that I came out or got divorced. That was really the hardest part for them. And they don't like change. So it took, and we didn't get it. We weren't estranged until about 6 years after I came out. And then we were estranged for about 2 years. And now we're working on repair. But it speaks to me because I understand what it's like to love somebody, not like them very much, and love the version of themselves. But knowing that, like now I know that my job is to know this new person and to hopefully begin to love this new person the way I loved the person that was before. And unless you've been through something like that, it's really, really hard to explain. I understand what my wife was talking about so much more than I did before I had this experience. So
Yeah.
these experiences give us language, and it's so nice to have people that understand like exactly what you're talking about. So, did you have a coming out song?
Yes, and it's still heavy on the playlist. If you look at my end of year Spotify, it's still up there in the top 3, 6 years on. There is rap artist by the name of Sarok, SA-ROC, that has a song called Hand of God. And there's just a couple of choice lyrics in there that I keep on coming back to that seem like ultimate fight song anthem type of things. They they there's a line in there that says, "They tried to bury my self-worth and call it suicide. I object." And every time I hear that line, I'm like, "That is exactly the energy that I need right now." So that's the one that was on repeat for months and months and months.
I'm a Broadway girl. Mine was Defying Gravity by which really I like, and then when I went to see Wicked and it was so good, the first one, I was like a mess on the floor. Because it means so much to me, that song. A book or a movie that really changed your perspective on things?
Ooh, well, I already talked to you about how I was surrounded by books when I was young. I will say jokingly that we all should have known something about the way that I was obsessed with, and not just a prurient way, but like in a raising all types of questions way. The sections in My Body, Myself, because of course my mom being a good late 60s, early 70s
Yep.
sociologist had a copy of that on the shelf. And there's that. I don't even need to describe this any more than to say, for folks of a certain age will know that section that talks about really getting to know yourself. And there's a picture, there's a photo of a woman looking at herself in the mirror, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
And that I would read the section around it too, and that photo and that section talking about how we really don't know ourselves,
Mhm.
even at the age of 7, 8, or 9. I wish that I had had the language to match the ways that just that passage and that picture together made me go, "Yeah, wow, we really don't know much about ourselves." And I'll say on the movie front, I ran a film festival for a little while, so I was actually big movie buff. But in a religion and gender class, our professor showed us Paris is Burning just a couple of years after it came out. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's a community, there is a world, there are people who acknowledge and recognize and hold each other as these. I still didn't even really know how to describe it. But as soon as I saw that film, there was something in me saying, "Oh my gosh, where and how and whenever I end up living into this self, there's the possibility of community."
Mhm.
And there's the power of that moment all over again.
That movie, so Tanda and I watched it because it's a queer movie. Like, we watched it a couple of years ago, like 5, 6 years ago, and just sort of didn't get it, and we're like, "Hmm." And then we became huge drag fans and started watching RuPaul. We watched Pose, the whole show, the show Pose that is all about the trans community and that community. And then we watched again, and I was like, "Oh, we missed so much the first time." I love that movie now. And I've even one of the girls that was featured in it, there's a documentary about her. She was unfortunately killed. And I watched that documentary. And it's like
Yeah.
it's a really great movie. And if you love like drag, you can really like I was a history major in college. So like learning the history and learning how like a lot of white artists stole stuff from drag. I just it was such, and it made so much sense because I had like watched Pose and I understood the houses.
There, and some of those same problematics have come up in conversation in the years since. I mean, nobody who was involved with Paris is Burning at the time thought that that film would gain much of a wide audience at all.
Isn't that
It was
crazy?
niche upon niche upon niche, right?
Right.
Talking about a community without,
Exactly.
and so they've had to navigate a little bit of that conversation themselves about sort of a white gaze on this primarily non-white community, and the ways that that movie has gained so much notoriety and culture and such a long life. And a lot of the folks in the film really didn't profit off of it. I think that the filmmaker has done a lot of work, from what I understand, to be in conversation and continued community with the folks that were in the film as a way of trying to bridge some divides and
But
create repair there. But
the creator was a white person? The person that filmed?
I believe so,
Yeah, I
yes.
didn't know that. That's interesting. Last question. How would you describe your life today?
Beyond the imaginings that I could even make for myself. Every moment and every day has offered new challenge and new opportunity, sometimes new challenge because of the new opportunity, like I was pointing to before, but rich in ways that I think some part of me knew was possible if I had come out, excuse me, but that I just had no way of conceiving because this self was so far beyond even my ability to imagine
Mhm.
that the way that my life is now is utterly beyond what anything I could have imagined or constructed for myself.
You know, one of the things that so I hear you. I understand that so well. Well, I was on podcast. It's a huge podcast and I can't remember it right now, but it's a lesbian podcast and I was on it a couple of weeks ago with my business partner Anna. And we were talking about waking up to a naked woman. And I joke about that because my wife sleeps in the nude. And so I'm like, sometimes I wake up in the morning and there's a naked woman in my bed. And I'm like, how did I do that? And I'm like, thank God I did that. Thank God. Like, thank God. And there is such a, like, also, Darren didn't, and I may have Darren back so we can talk about the spiritual piece of this journey. But like to me, it is like been such a spiritual journey for me. For some people that come out, it is not. And I think for you too, it's been a spiritual because it has made me become so much more aware of so much more grateful, so much more compassionate. Like I was compassionate before, but man, I'm so much better. And also like being with the right person for who I am. If I hadn't been brave enough, and if you hadn't been brave enough or courageous enough, courageous, my definition of courage is being afraid and doing it anyway. If we had
That's right.
been courageous enough to go and take the step off the cliff, which was only 3 feet down, but we thought it was 20, that none of this would exist. And that is, to me, is one of the greatest gifts that I've been given my entire life, that I was brave enough to do it. And that now I'm thinking of our listener right now who's terrified because my listeners are people who are just coming out and you're terrified. What would it be like to live a life that you could never have imagined? And that's my for them. So, Darren, how do people reach you? Then when someone's like, I got to get this person on my show, I've got to talk to her. How do they reach you? What's the best way?
That's incredibly kind. Before I do that, I'll just have to say, you were saying that you're a big musical person. Remember, I started in children's choirs when I was 10 and was touring, at 10 and a half. I was a theater geek all through high school. So it shouldn't surprise you that, of course, I also have a Broadway anthem in my back pocket as well, right? It's, everybody says don't, everybody says don't, everybody says don't walk on the grass, don't disturb the peace, don't skate on the ice. Well, I say do, I say walk in the grass it was meant to feel. I say sail, tilt to the windmills, and if you fail, you fail. That describes where we are right now, right?
Yes. And you have a beautiful voice. It's the first time I've heard you sing. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So luckily my name is spelled very uniquely. Thanks, mom and dad. It's Dahron, Dahron Johnson. You can find me on pretty much any of the socials. If you just look up the spelling of that name, you'll find a couple in the greater world, but there will only be this one to make it worth sorting. You can also look for DJ Contraption, as in that infernal contraption.
Well, Darren, thank you so much. It was so nice to have this conversation with you. We need to get a drink soon. Take care of yourself. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All the same with you, much love, and I look forward to the next hello already.